Hello, and welcome to the Racing Revolutions podcast. I will be your host Elissa Kellan to give you the rundown with the F1 world, including race weekends, championships, and so much more. This weekend we kicked off round 10 of the 2023 Drivers' World Championship with 71 laps, 10 turns, and 1 DRS zone in Spielberg, Austria at the Red Bull Ring for the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix. A minute of silence was observed to honor the late Delano van 't Hoff, and the race began under dry but cloudy conditions. Delano was a Dutch racing driver who was the 2021 F4 Spanish Championship champion. He died in a multi-car collision in a Formula Regional European Championship race in Spa. Max Verstappen started on pole for the Austrian Grand Prix, defending his position successfully from Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton overtook Lando Norris to secure fourth place, while Fernando Alonso, Nico Hülkenberg, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, and Alexander Albon held the remaining point-scoring positions. In the early stages of the race, there were incidents involving Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, and Valtteri Bottas, leading to the deployment of the safety car. Max Verstappen maintained his lead after the restart, while Charles Leclerc faced pressure from his teammate Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris raised concerns about Lewis Hamilton exceeding track limits. Sergio Perez and George Russell engaged in an exciting battle in the midfield, with Perez eventually overtaking Russell. Pierre Gasly also made a successful move on Nico Hülkenberg. During the race, Lewis Hamilton received a warning for exceeding track limits, while struggling with the handling of his car. Nico Hülkenberg retired due to a power loss, resulting in a virtual safety car period. Several drivers, including Hamilton, Norris, Gasly, and Albon, took advantage of the situation to make pit stops. Verstappen chose to stay out and maintained his lead. When racing resumed, Verstappen held a significant lead over Leclerc, with Perez in third. Hamilton received a 5-second penalty for track limit violations, and Sainz began making progress by overtaking Norris. An incident between Ocon and Sargent in the pit lane was also noted. As the race progressed, Carlos Sainz made impressive progress, overtaking Hamilton and Perez. Meanwhile, the battle between Leclerc and Verstappen intensified, with Leclerc closing the gap and Verstappen struggling with tire degradation. Verstappen eventually pitted, followed by Perez, while Leclerc continued on a different strategy. Verstappen quickly caught up to Sainz and overtook him for second place, while Norris also made a successful move on Hamilton. The race strategies were shaping up as the drivers jostled for positions on the track. Lando Norris made progress, but Oscar Piastri's front wing got damaged in a midfield incident. Carlos Sainz received a time penalty for exceeding track limits, and teams reminded their drivers to stay within bounds. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc defended against Max Verstappen's pursuit until Verstappen used DRS to pass him between turns 1 and 3. In an eventful race, drivers engaged in intense battles and faced penalties for track limit violations. Verstappen led the race ahead of Leclerc, while Norris, Hamilton, and Alonso fought for positions. Pit stops and penalties shuffled the order, with Norris overtaking Gasly and Sainz engaging in a thrilling battle with Norris. Verstappen and Perez implemented different strategies during their pit stops, with Verstappen switching to medium tires and remaining in the lead, while Perez opted for hard tires and rejoined in fifth place. Perez aimed to catch the drivers ahead and secure a podium position. Meanwhile, Hamilton faced challenges with track limits and car performance, but was encouraged by his team to continue pushing forward. Norris made a mistake, allowing Perez to overtake him, and Perez then set his sights on Sainz's Ferrari, nearly replicating the move in the next lap. In an intense race, Perez managed to pass Sainz on lap 61 after several thrilling attempts. However, Leclerc maintained a comfortable lead and crossed the finish line around 5 seconds behind the race winner, Verstappen. Perez secured the final podium position, with Sainz and Norris following closely behind. Stroll made a successful move to claim the final point, while Williams faced setbacks with penalties for Sargent and Magnussen. Verstappen also made a late pit stop to secure the fastest lap of the race. In summary, Alonso and Aston Martin finished in 6th place, Mercedes took 7th and 8th with Hamilton and Russell, Gasly and Stroll secured points, while Williams left the weekend without any points. Alfa Romeo failed to score, and there were changes in the standings due to penalties for track limit violations. Norris and Alonso were promoted, and other drivers faced penalties as well. Thank you for tuning into the Racing Revolutions podcast. I've been your host Elissa Kellan with the rundown of the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix, and I'll hopefully see you next time with another episode.